am Sarah Denham, the Director of LeadAR. We're here with Erin MacNeil, the Spa Business Coach, and Bobbi Ketrow, the Director of Strategic Accounts for Aesthetic Record. And today we're going to talk all about planning your holiday offer from start to finish and all of the best practices we see with our practices that we work with. First things first, Erin, will you just tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what you do to coach med spas?
Sure. So, as Sarah said, I help med spas grow their profit, have organized operations, and develop their teams. So, there are three areas that we really focus on, which is financials and metrics. We focus on operational excellence, and we focus on team and leadership development.
That is awesome and so crucial to everything we're going to talk about today. So, first things first for both of you guys, when everyone's planning their holiday season, what are the top mistakes you see med spas make? Bob?
I think that the top mistake I hear and hopefully prevent them before I see them online with my accounts is people will say, "Oh, our blank, our Halo laser sells so well for the holidays. We're going to do so many Halo packages, all of these things, or discount them, or whatever it may be." And if it's something that's already selling very well by itself, don't just have that by itself discounted. It's selling at full price. Like, why are we going to discount it more? Like, let's think of different ways to bundle it in or whatever it may be. So I would say that that's the first mistake is things that are already selling at full price. People are discounting them more and not adding more value to it. Um, where people would be willing to pay at full price. And then the other one would be, I would say, overwhelming with specials. So like a holiday special or a holiday doesn't need 50 different options. I think there's a little bit of decision fatigue that comes in with that with the clients. They're getting holiday promotions not just from you, but from absolutely everything in America, everywhere you look. Like I think McDonald's even has like holiday specials at this point. And so I think that you really need to think of your consumer and like what's going to be extremely straightforward, not overwhelm them.
I love that you touched on choice fatigue, but also the other thing that I see is especially because we look at a lot of numbers and metrics. They'll put out a special that is not in alignment with the average spend that they typically have. So I see this mistake with gift certificates as an example. They'll say, "We're putting out a gift certificate. It's $100. If you buy $100, you get $25 credit." Well, if your average spend is $400, why are you encouraging them to only opt in for 100? So back to what you said, Bobby, is also, if there is something that's selling really well and you know that it's a heavy hitter, you want to match an offer that is going to bring in that higher spend so that during that busy season, because most people aren't as cognizant of like adhering to their budget and they're like, I just want to get the thing and it's on special, where you want to know your average spend so that you can position your offers to actually sell at a rate where you are not encouraging them to spend less than they normally would.
That's such a good point. And do you typically recommend that they would do any sort of like member only specials versus regular patients since they're typically a different average?
Yes, I actually just talked to a client about this the other day. She's putting together her membership, and it turns out the discount that she wants to do is actually not as great as what the members already get. So I think it's really important to highlight something specific for your members, keep it exclusive, keep it high level. Again, people love memberships, and especially if your average spend is super high. Well, those more elite clients, they actually really enjoy and love that they get something special that no one else gets. So I think that that's really a great point you brought up. Yes, do something special for your VIPs, your high spenders, recognize them. And then for everyone else, maybe just incentivize to purchase something that they haven't done before. But please keep your average spend in mind because we don't want to encourage them to spend less with you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And also, I think it's just hard to know where to start. And those are great starting points. And so, Bobby, I'm going to ask you when we talk about know your numbers with practices all the time. Aaron's very passionate about that. We talk about it all the time. So obviously, we need to know your average patient spend. What reports should they be pulling in aesthetic record if they use it as their EMR to gather this information?
Yeah, so I think it truly depends on how detailed you want to get versus if we just want to go off of basics. So like if I'm pulling that, I typically will use our sales export because I like to get really in the nitty gritty. So, like, I want to break it down by like certain categories and looking at the discounts, looking at what are things that are actually coming in to get redeemed as well. So, like, not just people like spending, truly transacting that day, but what are people redeeming? So, sales export's probably going to be my go to, or in Business Insights, just that average sale report.
Mhm.
Um, if I'm wanting to look at members by themselves, I will typically also go to in the clients or patients tab. I use our filters there and get kind of creative because then you can pull in other demographics too, and see, different contact information, but like referral source as well. So kind of a mix of a few, but when in doubt, sales export all day long.
Yeah, absolutely. I think knowing your numbers, it's something that we say all the time, but it truly is so important when you're, especially when you're planning your offer, to know your cost of goods sold, your average patient spend. If your med spa's been around a while, pulling historically what sells are at that time
Yes.
of year.
And I think a lot of people, we touched on it in a different session yesterday. I think a lot of people have recency bias. So someone might
Mhm.
say, like, oh my gosh, everybody asks about this. Like, we absolutely need to do a special about it. Or, we sell this all the time. You need to still pull the reports. Like, you can't just go off a gut feeling when it comes to promotions and all of that, because what you're hearing and what's actually happening from your consumers are two totally different things in a lot of cases, right? Or if everyone's always asking about it truly, then why aren't the sales reflecting that? There might be a gap there as well. So I think that numbers are extremely crucial in aesthetic record, um, pulling those out, but LeadAR, like, I feel like you really need to pull from there too and seeing like what are people clicking at, or like what are people looking at and never buying.
One of the most underrated tools in our CRM, but is also in any CRM that you might be using, is there's abilities to rate your clients. So once you decide kind of the what, which I'll kind of go back to this because I have another thought on that. But once you decide the what your offer is, segmenting your client list to target the correct people about your offers. And in our CRM, there's a way where you can kind of give a point system for people who just engage with your content. And so since you're doing, especially if you're doing more aggressive offers, you might have someone like Sally has opened and engaged with every email and text message you've ever had, but maybe she hasn't booked an appointment in 6 months. She would have like a high score. So you want to keep hitting her with your promos and letting her know those things are happening because maybe she is just waiting for a sale. But I think segmenting your list instead of just blasting everyone the whole time and being really, really strategic about who gets what messaging and who gets what promos too. I think if you're going to offer multiple, is an underrated tool and also a better way to stretch your marketing budget because the more segmented, the better. With all of that, once you kind of know your numbers and you're looking at it, Erin, how do you help a med spa pick what their offer is? Like, what are the like factors you look into for that?
Especially for like holidays.
Yeah, for the holidays.
Yeah, so there are a bunch of different factors, so it can depend.
Mhm.
The number one thing I'm looking for is, what is the intention? So if you have to set a goal, okay? So if the goal, and that's our intention, is to gain traction, gain awareness, we just want high volume sales, or is it profitability? Is it packages? Once we know what the actual goal will be in terms of the business strategy, what do we actually want to receive as the business? Is it more profit? Is it more clients? Is it new members? Whatever it is. But when we come down to the dollars and cents, I'm always looking at, like, how much money is that thing actually making you? And
Mhm.
especially with membership, when they want to promote it and they're like, yeah, I want to get 50 new members. And I'm like, let's just look at the bottom line and see if that's the best strategy for right now. Understanding your consumer, as you mentioned, what are they looking at and what do they want? And how is it going to benefit your business? So that really I look at profitability of the offer. Once we know what the intention is, if it is to get more members, it's like, okay, what is that value add or that extra thing that's going to bring more of a bottom line to your business? Or again, if it's one specific service treatment package, then what about that specific package will allow you to become profitable? I see way too often during holiday, especially when we look at Black Friday, I've had so many clients who did like a Tox discount. And for the next year, they were literally, because it also didn't bring in their ideal client, they were literally like giving away everything just to make these like kind of low spending, non ideal clients happy. And even then, as you guys probably know, when it's not your ideal client, even when they got the best deal, they still want more from you.
Mhm.
So, yeah, you're better off to stick with your ideal client, something that's going to bring in profit for your business. And again, avoid choice fatigue.
Mhm.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, I really like to look at what is what are these promotions going to set for the next few months in the practice, like the cadence. So, like, if you sell an absolute ton of these lasers, do you have somebody who can truly just do those lasers for the next month? You also then have to look at, because you don't want to sell a bunch of promos and then it's like, oh, great, we'll see you in 4 months because we've now, overdone it or whatever. Or like, can you afford to have somebody who is working for the next month who is just doing these redeemed services? Look at that person. Are they going to upsell? Or are they going to sell other retail items or whatever it may be when they're actually getting that patient in their chair then? Because that could, it could just hurt your numbers when it comes down to actually coming in and receiving them and such. So, like, what can you afford to pay off for the next few months?
Right. So we look at this in an operational P&L as liability income. So if you are selling off a bunch and like it, everyone wants to have a 100K day on Black Friday or whatever, right? Which is great. But then as you mentioned, you funnel in all this cash, you've got a ton of liability income, and then because you did so well on that one day or that weekend or that month, for the next several months, you are like cash negative. And sometimes that's really going to hurt your overall operation because although you took that cash in, this is why we call it liability income. Because if you are not strategic about, as you just mentioned, if we sell these packages, we then have our forward strategy, which is everyone who bought a package, here are the list of upsells and cross sells you must be doing so that we don't just serve that one package. And then, the next 6 months, we're really not collecting any kind of income from that client. So, yeah, it's like you need a strategy for the day that you're going to execute. But then also, if you do really well, sometimes it comes back to bite you because you funneled all your business into one day or one weekend, and then you have no cash flow
Mhm.
like over, let's say, December, over January, over February, and then you're like, oh my gosh, we can't sustain
Right.
this. I can't, like, I'm gonna have to let people go. But if you do that, there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to have an after strategy,
Yes.
like you said, right? When they come in, what are we talking to them about? What's the upsell? What's the cross sell? How often are they coming? And the other thing that I tell people to do after you do a huge promo, you need to make sure that you reach out to those clients to use the treatment,
Yes.
use the money, or use whatever thing, because there's always those clients that come back 2 years later. It's like, I got this package and I never used it.
Right.
And now I want it. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's a $3,000 package that we collected a year or two ago. And now I got to pay someone to perform those services when like money's been spent.
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah, I think sometimes if you're not, and again, that's why I kind of go to what is the intention
Mhm.
before we pick what the promo is? Like, let's think this through.
Yes.
Yep.
And I always say, like, don't have promotions just to have promotions because you feel like you have to for like Black Friday or whatever it may be around the holidays. Like, I understand you don't want to be left behind. That doesn't mean you have to stop marketing. Like, you can still have things and say, like, hey, here are awesome holiday ideas or things to prepare or things that you can gift. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, steeply discount. You can add in value or do bundles and all of that. So don't feel like if you can't necessarily afford to do a bunch of promotions, like, don't feel like you have to. Just, shift your marketing and go from there. Something else that I also like to look at when you're kind of mapping out the next few months is, let's take a look at your inventory. What's on your shelf? What can you afford to move? Because I find that some people will be like, oh, I'm going to do this promotion, and we're going to do, let's just use RF microneedling, for example, where that tip or that consumable is $100. Well, if you have 100 of those on hand, do you really want to have to buy 200 of them before the end of the year and then have your liabilities up for your inventory? Or, I think it just kind of depends, right? Like that might make sense in a lot of cases, but some people are solopreneur, maybe it doesn't. And so I like to look at what do you have on your shelf? What do you want to move? And let's also look at that when we're putting together your promotions, because if you have some filler or a influx of filler that will actually expire in 6 months, great. Let's work backwards. Let's bundle
Mm.
some of that in and put a deadline on that promotion too. And I just like to look at it like you don't want to have to buy a bunch of stuff in order to run this promotion.
Mhm.
I mean, if it makes sense, it makes sense. But if you can't afford that, you should know those numbers.
Absolutely. It sounds like a lot of planning, a lot of our tips are really working backwards, like
Yeah.
setting your intention. What do you have on hand? What works for you? What's historically worked? What is your staff like? And then kind of setting your goals and setting your promos and your discounts and then running it from there. So
And it's funny because it's like it sounds like the opposite of everything I just said, but you also don't be so intimidated by it that you don't like look into those things and just run a quick promotion, right? And I feel like and maybe you disagree or agree. I feel like once you really dig into that and you kind of get a structure, the the next time you do it, it's going to be so much faster to find what's going to be best for your promotions and stuff. Like you're doing this groundwork that one time to form really good habits, and then it'll really be like second nature.
I totally agree with that. You do have to look at your cash flow because you may have to gear up and pre-purchase, pre-order a bunch of things because you never want your shelves to be empty. You want to be able to sell something right away. And sometimes the lead time, especially if it's a holiday kit, a holiday package from your vendors, sometimes those are limited edition and you have to order them so far in advance, otherwise you don't get them. And so I definitely encourage giving yourself a long runway. So I always explain to clients like the bigger the airplane, the longer the runway has to be for it to take off. So if you want it to be successful, you have to give yourself that runway to really plan strategically for your cash flow. What are you ordering? When's it coming in? And you might have to put it on your website. You might have to add it to your Shopify. Like all of that takes time. So, yeah, the longer you can do it in advance, and then you start marketing and agitating, maybe not your direct offer, but you start to actually, as you mentioned, right? Look at those specific segments of warm leads and hot leads, and you start to create your marketing strategy based on starting to agitate what you know is going to be on promo or featured 2 months down the line, but now you're starting to really agitate it ahead of time so that when it drops, people are like, oh, yes, this is like, oh, this is so great. I've been watching all of your stuff. And then they're ready to just make that move and purchase.
I love that. That brings us like perfectly into our next phase. So one thing I just want to comment on again is clearly we have a lot of passion about the planning stage, but I think that I know for myself, I get asked all the time, like, yeah, I need to do something for the holidays. Like, what are all the other med spas doing? And it's like, it is so specific and unique to that practice and what they offer, what makes them money, their staff, their goals, their price points, their community awareness of their brand exists. It's different for a med spa that's been open 6 months versus one that's been open 10 years. And so I like that we've harped on that it's personal per med spa what you want to do. And so now that we've got the plan, we've sat down, we've looked at our numbers. And again, even outside of just the holiday season, I think you both can agree this should be done, I would say minimum quarterly. What do you guys think? Like,
Yeah, I actually have a marketing calendar I share with clients to start laying the foundation. It's 6 months. It's like January to June
mhm,
and July to December.
Yeah.
And I want your team plugging things in ahead of time so that you get the ideas going. And
mhm.
then I agree, you're doing monthly and then quarterly meetings in and around what you're actually approving and what you're going to put out.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think quarterly is a great place to start and then just kind of seeing how often things are being purchased, are they being talked about? And then if your team can, or if you can support or you want to do some sort of monthly thing, I think that's okay. You just don't want to overdo it. And again, like get back to that fatigue stage.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so now that we've got our plan, we know what we're doing. The next step is going to be executing it. And so this is where you have your tech stack is going to be super crucial. to what you do. And
Our
so
favorite.
I know
Yeah.
our favorite, maybe not your favorite if you're listening, because we hear about how it's hard all the time. And so your execution strategy. So you've done all your hard work. Maybe you've worked with Erin and her team to create this goal. Now we want people to know about it. And so once we know the goal, and I'm going to answer this too, but once we know the goal, how do we get it out to clients? And so, Erin, I love that you talked about having a marketing calendar. I think that is just the most crucial thing. And so when you're talking to a client about their marketing calendar, strictly for client communication, what channels are you putting on there for them?
Oh, this is a good one because I'm sure you guys hear this all the time, right? Where they're like, I did an email. And you're like, you did one email? Like, girl, that is not enough.
Mhm,
So, in our marketing calendar, what we encourage our clients to look at is definitely what you just mentioned. What are the different layers of marketing that you are doing and different channels or different methods?
mhm,
So, yes, there's texting, there's email, there's social media, there's that thing called the telephone where you pick up and call people. So we have it layered out based on the offer that you're putting and then all of the channels. How are you communicating that? We really encourage our clients to look at every single facet of how do you get the message out because your clients there's some clients who like text, there's some clients who love email, there's some clients who are really still appreciate a phone call, especially if they're like a VIP
mhm,
or a high spender. So absolutely we tell them like you would know your main channel where people come and find you and that's the busier thing whether it's email, your website, social media, but you have to look at your planning and your messaging and repeating it on every single platform within the context of how people use that particular platform
mhm.
for social, for email, for texting.
Absolutely. I think so. The average lead converts after between 5 and 12 touches. And so you have obviously your omni-channel approach. So you have, your social media, your email, your text campaign. So it's not that you have to send them 12 text messages. It's you need to communicate the message to them, 5 to 12 times and hopefully more than that, depending on how aggressive you're trying to be or how many offers you have. And so I think it's important to keep that in mind because we run into that all the time. People say, well, I put it on my newsletter or I've posted it out on my stories. Like I've posted just kind of a static graphic, every now and then. And while that is great and that's a crucial part of your strategy, you need to, put it as many places as possible and don't be afraid to kind of be repetitive, because your audience might not see that post, or they might not have seen that story, they might not have seen that email. I mean, I know for me, shoot, like Kava emails me every single day. And like, I mean, I might not open it.
Right.
And also for your budget, email is incredibly cheap. Like it is very hard to overspend with email. So don't be afraid to email pretty frequently what you're doing because it's inexpensive to you and it's just kind of something you can kind of set and forget. Another hot tip here, if you are doing repetitive emails, make sure that your content is slightly different. If you're using LeadAR, please ping your account manager or myself and I'll help look at this with you. But you're going to want to make sure you don't go, that your email delivery is better. You're going to want to make sure your subject line and your content is different, even if it's the same promo, just change your messaging or have a different graphic or have a different title. And you can honestly just throw that stuff in ChatGPT to get a nice little array of what to put in there.
Yeah. I have something to say on this
Yeah.
too. So I'm pretty passionate about it because I hear all the time like this promo didn't sell very well or whatever, and I ask like, what did you do to promote it then? And I feel like it is the biggest thing of people saying like, well, I posted it on socials. If that's all you're doing, think of how many things we're absorbing and seeing on our phones all day long, and it doesn't feel personal at this point.
Mm.
Mhm.
So I think that you have to do multiple things, but also I think it's pretty hard to overdo it when it
Mhm.
comes to promoting what you're, selling or whatever it may be, because like you said, you get emails all the time. So like some of them you see, some of them you just like bulk delete or whatever it may be. So like don't get discouraged if after one post people aren't knocking your door down to like come buy the promotion, right? And I also think that you can automate so many things, but at the end of the day, if you're paying for somebody to be at that front desk or doing any sort of administration work and they have downtime, pick up the phone and do the things that aren't automated. Like it's okay. It's still okay to do in 2025 to call people or like especially if you're a smaller, more intimate practice and you kind of know certain patients, you could say, hey, we've talked about, this halo laser so many times. Like, this is a great promotion for you. Like, don't miss out, or whatever it may be. Like, that can really go such a long way. I tell people too, I'm like, why don't you, if you have some downtime at the front desk, like, why don't we pull a report and you do one sort of personal touch on these 10 people and track how those 10 people convert, and do that with another 10 and just kind of compare and see what works, like what's going to be best for your demographic. Like, it's not always going to be a perfect formula, but like, let's throw some stuff at the wall and see what works for you.
I love that, and I know you're passionate about staff training.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I had one
No,
more
please
point
ask.
on
Yeah.
that.
Yep, go for
We talked about this a lot on our calls, right? I feel like they're venting sessions, but like they're very constructive. But
it.
so the other thing that you mentioned about well, they're smart lists, right? So we use a CRM, and we activate smart lists and we look at the data. And I think it's so important, like as you're putting your messaging together, and you might have text messaging, an email thread, your nurture sequences, use those smart lists, because those are the people, and you can see all of the touch points that they have interacted with inside of your business. So it's literally like a no-brainer, because you can see who's on that list, and you just curate your messaging to this kind of buyer. So I feel like it's shooting fish in a barrel sometimes that you guys are missing, and it's such a smart feature that you should be using.
Yeah.
And
I think.
I
Oh,
sorry.
go.
I feel like too, something we've talked a lot about the different channels and everything that we market on. You cannot forget to promote this heavily in your office.
Mhm.
So I know you're about to say something about staff, but even
Mhm.
just nice signage and like walk
Mhm.
through your front door, look where a normal patient would look in the waiting room. What are they seeing? And where can you promote those things in the office as well? Because it's just kind of like reinforcing that. Or maybe they'll think about it, and then in a week when they get a text about that promotion again, they'll be like, oh yeah, I meant to, book that or do whatever. So I think that can go a long way. I think Starbucks says that if you go into a Starbucks, I think they have to have a minimum of 13 signs about their app. And their stores aren't that large. And so I need to like go in and actually count and see. But you go into a Starbucks, it's not like I'm overwhelmed by the amount of signage about their app, right?
Mhm.
It's just in very convenient places. And so you see it one time and you might see a different one the next time you're in there. So I think that's something to note and, do a physical walkthrough.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just those subtle nudges. And
Mhm.
I know sometimes we overthink and we're like, I don't want to be overkill. I'm going to lose patience. They're going to think I'm too much. But like, if it's subtle, they're not going to notice it. As you mentioned, right? 13 signs, you might think, wow, that's overwhelming. But because they're subtly placed in areas where your eyes are going to graze over it anyway, it blends in, but it's that like almost subconscious embedded nudge to say like use our app, or like you could be gaining points, you could get a free coffee.
Right.
So yeah, don't be shy to do that, because the other thing is, when you think about it, people want to be led.
Mhm.
People want to know, what should I be doing? What should I be paying attention to? And if they're coming inside of your practice, like you are the authority there. So lead them to the thing you want them to know about or do.
I love that so much. We're talking about this. So my background is retail, so I love some signage, and I think it's an underrated tool. And so
Absolutely.
to track, back to data tracking with your CRM, there's a feature inside LeadAR where you can make QR codes. And what I think is really cool about this is your QR code, you can change the link to it at any time. So like if you just print a bunch of QR code stickers, or something kind of about your practice, track where people are in your practice that they're looking for this information. So like maybe it'll surprise you where it is. So it could be in a treatment room, it could be on your front door, it could be in your bathroom, it could be at your front desk. I mean, you could, like Bobby said, you could have 13, you have 20 depending on how big your practice is. And then inside of LeadAR, you can go and see where are you getting the most scans, and then you know to put your crucial information there. And so back to when with all these ways you communicate with patients, just like planning, everyone's going to hate this response, but it is personal to your client base. Like where someone goes to your in your practice to get information is not the same as the person across the street. And when it comes to even emails and text messages, utilizing a very simple pipeline. So for example, let's say you just like start testing your audience, send out a text blast, and then track in a pipeline if that text blast brought you any appointments. Same with your email campaigns. Put a link to your booking link in your email. If you don't do this in every email you send, shame on you. But track your clicks every time you have that. And then you can see, okay, like I have one client that her client base is a little older and they love email. Like she's like, I don't even really do text because, but email works for her. And so the more that you know about that, the better. And so it's just unique to you, but there's so many different ways. And also, even if something isn't your number one, it's more just to make your budget smarter. So if you know that you're like, wow, I have so many people that text messaging works really, really well for me and my awareness, then just continue to have as much text messages as possible. Or vice versa, if it doesn't, put your money maybe into something else that makes a little bit more sense for your practice or your goals. Um, and so I want to talk a little bit about the front desk staff because I do think that's again another underrated
Huge.
tool.
Yeah.
And so for you guys, what do you guys think is the simplest way to make sure your team is aligned on these types of goals?
So I am a huge believer in if they don't buy into this, then you won't sell because that's who is on the phone, that's who's face to face. So I think that you can't just shoot out a message like, "Hey guys, here's the promo that we're running," and expect them to know how to talk about it and all of that. Like you have to kind of give them the thought process behind why this is a special or whatever it may be, which I know seems like overkill, but it's like they have to buy in to be passionate about selling it as well, right? Um, it's not just their job, like, it's a team effort. And so I think that you really need to have like a quick team powwow. I recommend doing that at least once a week, a quick 15-minute stand up or whatever it may be. If you can't afford to do a longer meeting, once a month or whatever it may be. So I think sitting there and really talking them through it physically is saying, like, here's the promotion, here are some, common questions. I think you need to dissect the promotion from all different angles too, because they're going to get some oddball questions about it, right? And you want them to be confident talking about it so that they don't shy away from it in fear of having questions around it. So I always did a team meeting and recommend that strongly. And then I would also do like cute little cue cards or something for them that they can physically keep, because having it digitally in their email, everything is super helpful. But if you're on the phone making an appointment and you're like mid making an appointment talking about it, then they're starting to ask you questions, you don't want them to have to click off of it. And I think just having like a quick reminder right there with all of the promotions is really helpful.
Mhm.
I have
Sometimes I like paper, I guess.
Yeah, it's like old school.
Yeah.
I make notes. I'm that person. But 2 points off of what you just said, Bobby, is so important. So the communication factor, so that's one. Yes, we're going to train them, but the deeper understanding of why and what it is. But further beyond that is why it's important to the clinic that we sell X amount or that we get, a certain message out or that we hit that new protocol of like ask everyone, so that you really share what the goal is so that they understand, yeah, you're a part of this to help implement. So beyond what you mentioned is something that we teach our clients is you should be having, especially around like a holiday season, a promo, something that feels like it's going to be big or we want it to be big. We have to be doing daily huddles with our team. Now, what we kind of tell our clients to do, and especially with the admin team or front desk or concierge, uh, you will get them, or what I would do with my team is, so we would have a daily huddle. So this is a common practice in hotels. You don't not do a daily huddle. Like it just doesn't help you at all. So during that huddle in the morning, we actually just look at the book of business today. Who is coming in? And we would always assign one person who has to like dive deep on the clients that are coming in to look at purchase history,
Mhm.
what retail might be needing to be refreshed, or, what services have they had before that might go into alignment with the promo that we're doing or the thing that we're featuring, so that the conversation feels more natural and they can prepare for it, in the sense that, let's just say that we are doing a tox promo. We see someone coming in who's had several facials, and maybe this is the opportunity to cross promote. It's like, you've invested so much into your skin. We are holding this promo, where you just start talking to them about it because they're already invested in this other thing inside of your business. So, to take that further in your daily huddle, what you want to be looking for is, going through the history so that we can start to position a conversation, whether that's at the front desk or with the provider. So again, I'm old school. It's like I come from the time when you would put a sticky note on the paper file
Right.
and like put the sticky note on. This is what you're going to talk about, especially for the providers. And then the provider would maybe mark off, okay, I got an opportunity to talk about this and this. And then as they hand the file back, the front desk person will close out the conversation, what they've missed. You have to communicate because you can't have your team rise to goals that they don't know exist.
Uh-huh.
So it's really important. And yeah, just painting the context as to why this is so important and why it's going to help people. The buy-in from the team, as you mentioned, is so important. And if you're a poor communicator, like start there, right? Just talk to your team.
Yeah. And I think that that is important, like just in like the why of it as well. Like, even if it is just even to say, like, hey, this is to bring us more clients or we're trying to get more members, like, it's okay to tell your staff that. They should be just as invested in that as you are. And they should also be just as incentivized because more clients for them usually means more opportunities for them as well. And so I think that utilizing your team and also getting their feedback when you're in the planning stage of
Oh,
what
absolutely.
do they hear about, what do they talk about, what are they passionate about, especially providers. I think making it a true team effort is such an underrated part of planning an offer.
I love to protect my front desk crew so much because one, I think that they dictate a lot of how your practice flows, but also every single touch point is so crucial for retention and even conversion. And who is doing most of those touch points? I mean, that's going to be your administrative team, your front
Mhm.
desk, and all of that. And so that role is so incredibly important. They need to be the most informed, but they also they're going to dictate a lot of how this promotion runs, right? And so I think that you have to empower them to talk about it, but also taking that feedback and after the first few days of them talking about it, going in and seeing what's the perception been like. Do we need to kind of pivot, or do you feel comfortable talking about it? Can't be just like an information dump and then you come back in a month like, oh, that promo really did shitty. You have to really do the full, like, it's a loop,
Mhm.
constantly going back to it.
All right. So to recap so far, we had our plan, we made our goals in this first part, and then now we've got our social media, email, text marketing, signage for our business. We have that all planned out. We've trained our front desk, so we're executing. We're running through the promo. And is there anything else on the execution stage that you guys
I failed
think?
to mention a few things. I'm sorry,
Okay, go for
jabberjaws.
it.
So I also think that it needs to be very accessible for your patients, right?
Yes.
We could talk about it all day long, but I'm like, where am I going to buy this? So it needs to be accessible to buy for your patients. If you're only open 8 to 5, you can't only have it be available for 8 to 5, right? You're missing such a huge window of that sale opportunity. So putting it online so that when they're doom scrolling at night or when they're finally catching up on their text messages or emails, there is that call to action right there. They can go in and buy. If you have an app, making sure it's on there, promoting it, doing all of the things so that it's right at their fingertips, even if you're unavailable.
Yeah, path of least resistance will win every time. This is why Amazon is outpacing so many other businesses online where, you would normally buy from somewhere else and you're like, oh, I'll just get it from Amazon because one, they already have my credit card. It's so easy. I just log in, I click a button, it's at my house later today. They've made it so easy and accessible. So I 100% agree with that. uh, in the execution stage, so as you mentioned, you've got your messaging out, you're on all the channels, you're promoting it internally, and you did mention this, Bobby, just reinforcing this message. You have to look at how well is it selling. So I always say to clients, champions watch game footage. Elite athletes always watch the game back, see what they can do better, and if you're doing this daily or weekly in real time, while that promo's running, it gives you an opportunity, as you mentioned, readjust verbiage, readjust how you're presenting it. If things aren't landing the way you want in real time, you have an opportunity. So, also just seeing as well internally who's really crushing it, who isn't. Maybe I need to pull some people aside, retrain them on it, give them different verbiage, support them, guide them. So, yeah, I think now, once your messaging is out, then we're now taking stock of how well is it doing. And as you mentioned, with all of the options and features in Lead AR, like it will tell you in real time
Yes.
how well things are doing and where they're doing the best so that you take note of that and you repeat it for later for another promo so that it becomes something that isn't daunting and is just super easy.
Mhm.
And I would say through that too, on when it's going really well, don't forget to communicate that as well.
Yes.
Your team is making transactions and all of that too, but they also need to hear like whatever you're doing to sell this promotion, you're killing it. It's doing amazing. Because if you run promotions all the time and they're only hearing like, oh, this isn't selling well, blah, 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 that is, I mean, right? We don't want to
Mhm.
only promote the negative. So I think that reinforcing them, it's going to hype them up more. They're probably going to talk about it even more like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, we're doing really well with it. But if you're getting a lot of online sales, they're not getting that gratification of actually selling it in office either. So they just need that, reminder of, hey, this is going really well. You're doing great. People are buying it later, even if you're not feeling like it's transacting really high in office.
I love that. I love the analogy too of watching your business like game film. I
Same.
think that's like awesome. But one thing I also think Bobby talks about this a lot, and I think is looking at yourself as a consumer. So like walking through your own med spa in person, like through the front door, at least, at least once a week. But I think about that on your client journey as well. Like take a fresh set of eyes. And if you are way too biased, like honestly, grab a friend who has nothing to do with the industry
Hmm.
and ask them to buy your promo and see like how hard it is. Like how many clicks did it take for them to find it? Do they understand what it is? Another hot take for me is when you're running promo copy, if you're doing something that's maybe a treatment that's not something people really know, like obviously I think we all know what weight loss and B12 and tox is and are, but if you're doing something maybe like a very specific skincare treatment or a laser treatment or a device that the average person just might not understand, does your content around it educate enough where people see why they need to get this done? And so look at yourself, like walk through your practice as a consumer and walk through your patient journey as a consumer. And if you can't, enlist someone in your life to do it. Honestly, enlist your husband. They have no idea what they're looking for. They won't know. Okay, so now we've done our event. We've tracked it during. We've looked at it throughout, and so I think the last thing I want to talk about is now that it's over. What to track and how to use that data for the next thing.
Our favorite part,
So,
the numbers.
yes.
Oh,
I do a few different things. So obviously we're pulling reports all throughout the promotion, right? Like we're trying to see how it's performing, all of the things. Once the promotion is over and you're really trying to take a step back and see what went well, I want to know who bought and why, where, all of those things. So I think obviously I'm pulling out the sales data. So, maybe in that patient filter going through and seeing who actually purchased it with that filter and then seeing, kind of where they came from. Was this their first initial purchase? How many of these promotions were new patients? I'm just kind of looking at like the who of it all. Was it our ideal target? Was that who we were even, promoting it to, or kind of where did we go right, essentially?
Mhm.
And is it the right type of patient? Like you said, that your client did that talk special, and then it brought in the kind of the wrong demographic for a year. So we just want to be, strategic about how we look at who actually bought it.
Mhm.
I okay, so when we look at the numbers and mentioning team, I'm a big fan of sharing transparency around numbers and metrics so that they can see, as you mentioned, this type of client purchased, but here's how many of this thing we purchased, which allows us now. Because so here's the thing, and I just want to say this as a blanket statement. If you're an owner or an operator, you're responsible for the P&L, you're responsible to look at the profitability of the business. It's very important to communicate to your team that if the business is profitable, the profit does not always go directly into your pocket, right? The profit is meant to cover a lot of other expenses, a lot of other ventures for your capex budget for the next year to, take you guys out to do a team building, day or whatever. So don't be shy to share that the business did really well. This reinforces that they have a stable job,
Mhm.
that they're safe and secure, and that they, with everyone's effort, were in good standing. I find too many times owners are like, I don't want to share the numbers because then my team is going to tell me like they need a raise. But the thing is, like, the profit never goes
Mhm.
into the person's pocket, or at least not 100% of it. So I just say that as a blanket statement. But then
100%.
really going through the metrics of, okay, yes, who bought? What was our average spend? Did we close out as many packages as we wanted? You know, you want to start measuring against what did we set out to do and what did we actually do, right? So we always have goal, or we have what we call budget, and then we have actual, so that we can start tying reality into our goal and see almost in a reverse engineering of like, okay, if we go back and look, where do we feel that we maybe missed the mark? Where do we feel that our messaging didn't land? And again, as you mentioned, in LeadAR, there's, and I use a very similar system, so I'm like, you guys need this. We look at all of those things to see, oh, okay, someone opted in for the promo from this angle, but not that angle. So we want our team to be aware of that as well, because they also need to get comfortable with the messaging, the branding, who is our ideal client, how do we really position? Because that helps them internally, even when you don't have promos, it helps them internally explain, feel more confident, sell more retail, because now they understand messaging a lot more. So, yeah, I always do a wrap up session to understand what the metrics were, what happened, what was our goal, and what was actual, and share it with the entire team. That's not just for your eyes only as the owner.
Mhm.
Everyone should know.
I want to reiterate that too, just because they're such a huge role in making the promotion successful. I feel like you're not doing them, or you're doing them a disservice if you don't give them that wrap up and say,
Mhm.
like, this is what the promotion brought in, and this is going to allow these patients to do X, Y, and Z, or whatever it may be. I think it's a really great way to kind of like dip your toe in the water too, of showing how your team will react to numbers, right? Because I think that if it's always this like mystified thing and they never know those numbers, they're going to think it's way higher than it is.
Yeah,
And
they
so
see the sales roll through, right? And they're like, "Well, we did great." And
yeah,
and that's why when I talk about profitability, the owner's like, "Yeah, but we're not profitable. Yeah, we had a lot of top line, but we have no bottom line." And it
exactly.
it just leaves so much room for your team to assume, and really it erodes your relationship with your team, because what I've seen is when you don't communicate, when you're really not the leader, right? Like the leader's job is to lead with communication and execution and information, and so being part of being a good leader is that you're going to share that with your team, whether they did, whether we, and we always say we,
Mhm.
whether we did good or bad, but really walking them through to get them to start caring, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, right? If it's something that you don't share, they don't have the same buy in, they don't have the same care factor, and it's not a surprise that they don't want to push for your promos.
Right.
So you have to share that information and make them a part of it. And as you mentioned, get them into understanding metrics and numbers and what success actually looks like on paper, not just feelings. So we always say facts, not feelings,
Yes.
right? Because sometimes it does feel like we did really well. And then we go through the facts and it's like, oof, we actually, it felt like we were busier. It felt like we sold more, but we actually didn't, or vice versa.
Mhm. And I think that's also what the facts not feelings, which I love that too, is tracking throughout the whole promo is so important. And I think you utilizing a tool like a CRM to like just track your pipeline of just engagement or purchases. Just there's so many ways. It just depends on what your offer is. But tracking, kind of providing those benchmarks or on your whiteboard having the competition in the break room of who's selling the most what. And that way you can communicate through it. And then also too, if you can like maybe readjust your goal halfway through if you're like, hey, we've been doing this holiday promo for 2 weeks. We've had no one interested. Maybe we need to be more aggressive, or maybe we need to throw in another thing, or
Mhm.
maybe we start over. Um, kind of doing it throughout is so crucial. And then also, too, it allows your teams to be so involved. I think that's so incredibly underrated. I think we can all agree is in your team, it can be your fresh eyes to that
Yes.
too, and utilize them for that, and also a great coaching moment for them to learn
Mhm.
how to make those promos or hopefully have more ideas. Okay, to end it off, I'll have you both do this, but any final advice or encouragement for someone as they're approaching the holiday season with their practice, Erin?
Oh, I have 10,000 thoughts. But
Right. I'm like, how
the
much time
thing
we got?
I know. So my final thought here, whether it's a holiday promo and that's coming up and you need to prepare for it, I always, when I'm chatting with owners who are overwhelmed, and here's the thing, I recognize as a business coach, I recognize that you are spinning 17 plates. I understand that. And what I encourage you to do is prioritize the things that grow your business, prioritize the activities that allow you to reach your goals, whatever they are. And so, with that said, when you think about Fortune 500 companies, when you think about big CEOs that you follow, right? So, let's just choose Apple as an example. Do you think that the CEO of Apple, do you think Tim Cook ever goes, you know what? We'll just wait to the last minute and do that promo there. Like, you know what? We don't need to check our inventory. That stuff is like boring. It takes forever. And like, who cares? Or do you think so if you have a big goal, if you want multiple locations, you want a multi seven-figure practice, you want a big team, you want a big impact, you have to step into that role to really understand I need to learn my CRM,
Mhm.
all of its features, all of the benefits. I need to communicate with my team. I need to be the leader to show them we lean into the difficult things and
Mhm.
we're going to do it differently. And we want to get good at the areas that maybe historically, I know for me, it's usually the tech stuff,
Mhm.
right? Like the
Yeah.
clients are not as savvy, but I promise you, leaning into your numbers, leaning into the technology, leaning into the thing that most people deem boring or like it's not important. These are the things that make the difference between a multi location, multi million dollar practice or not.
Mhm.
And so treat your business like you want it to be that Fortune 500. And just remember that the buck stops with you. If you are the practice owner or operator, you need to make it your business to lean into these tools, lean into your reporting, lean into your numbers so that you can actually lead with strategy and not, a hope and a prayer.
Oh my
Right.
God. We
Absolutely.
say all the time that if you treat a small business like a small business, it'll say stop small business.
Yeah.
And it is so true. I love that so much. I'm now going to be thinking of the CEO of Apple when I'm doing everything like in my day to day.
He did right.
But Bobby, if you want to take us home.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that my biggest thing that you should take away from this is that it may feel overwhelming, but it will always feel overwhelming if you never start it. So if you never dig in to kind of do that prep work or organize how to even structure a promotion, or even if we're not just talking about promotions, but just like your service offerings in general and your pricing and all of that, if you never do that work to kind of get to know your business and demographics and what is working and what is not, it will always feel overwhelming. So kind of like bite that bullet and just do it, and then you can just kind of like rinse and repeat or kind of adjust for the next, next holiday thing or promotion, event launch, device launch, whatever it may be, and your business will flourish 100%. There's a reason why everyone does these holiday promos, and it's because they're successful, and they do help your business in that year strong. And so it will, start today, and it will definitely pay off for your business.
But thank you both so much for your time. I feel
Thank
like this was
you.
so
Yes,
great,
this is
and
great.
Yeah.
I'm excited for everyone to see everyone's holiday promos this season.
Yeah.
So
Right. Me too. Thanks,
thanks.
guys.
Thanks.